Do you, are you supposed to be Jesus? Is that your whole thing?
I am Jesus. Thank you, everybody.
That's awfully heretical, but okay.
Charlie Kirk, a well-known public figure, had always been a man of strong opinions and big ideas. He spoke out loudly, always standing for what he believed in, no matter who disagreed. But one fateful day, something terrible happened. Charlie was on stage speaking to a crowd at Utah Valley University. The air was filled with excitement as people were gathered to hear him share his thoughts. Everything seemed normal until suddenly the unthinkable happened. A shot rang out. It was sharp and loud, cutting through the air like a lightning bolt. Charlie fell, struck by the bullet, and everything went quiet. In an instant, the man who had been the center of attention was gone. He didn't even get a chance to speak another word. His wife, Erica, stood there in shock. The doctor later told her that Charlie had died instantly, never even feeling the pain. But for Erica, the world seemed to fall apart in that one moment. She stood by Charlie's side, mourning the loss of the man she loved, and suddenly everything changed. The life they had built, the plans they had for their future, vanished in the blink of an eye. The news spread quickly, shocking people everywhere. How could this happen? Charlie Kirk, a man who had been loved and hated by so many, was now gone. And just like that, the world was left with an open wound. But the story didn't end there. Behind Charlie's murder lay a mystery, one that seemed to grow darker with each twist. The investigators began their search for answers, and what they uncovered shocked everyone. False leads, unexpected suspects, and even more chilling details about the crime came to light. As the investigation unfolded, the questions grew louder. Why was Charlie killed? What was the real reason behind the murder? And who was responsible for ending his life so suddenly, so violently? With each new discovery, the story became even more complex. The shooting was not just a random act of violence. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a web of lies, betrayal, and unanswered questions that nobody saw coming. The hunt for answers had begun, and it wasn't just about finding the killer. It was about uncovering the truth behind a murder that had shocked a nation and revealing a story that was far deeper than anyone had ever imagined. It was a bright afternoon at Utah Valley University. The campus was buzzing with excitement as students gathered to hear Charlie Kirk speak. He was a man known for his bold ideas, his strong opinions, and his ability to stir emotions in everyone who listened. Today was no different. Charlie stood confidently at the podium, his voice clear and strong as he spoke to the crowd. The air was thick with anticipation, and people were hanging on every word he said. It was a moment of power, a moment where Charlie was the center of attention, sharing his vision with the world. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Without warning, a loud, sharp sound cut through the air. The crowd froze. It was the sound of a gunshot, quick and deadly. Charlie's body jerked, and he collapsed. The crowd's excitement turning to screams of fear. The man who had been speaking just moments ago, who had been full of life and energy, was now lying still on the stage. The university campus, once filled with chatter and hope, was now filled with confusion and terror. Charlie's life had ended in an instant, and no one could understand how or why. Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, was miles away, unaware of what was unfolding. She had been busy with their children, trying to enjoy a quiet afternoon. But that peaceful moment was shattered by the news that Charlie had been shot. She rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding with fear and disbelief. When she arrived, the doctor confirmed what she had feared the most. Charlie was gone. He had died instantly, a victim of a senseless act of violence. Erica could hardly believe it. Her world had crumbled in an instant. The man she loved, the father of their children, was gone. The news spread quickly, and the shock waves rippled across the nation. Charlie Kirk, a figure who had sparked both admiration and anger in many, was now the victim of a crime that left everyone searching for answers. The country was stunned. How could something like this happen? Charlie had been known for his outspoken views, but no one could have predicted that it would end like this. His life taken so suddenly, so violently. At his memorial service, thousands of people gathered to pay their respects. A video of Charlie's final moments played on the screen, showing him speaking to the crowd, full of life, just moments before the tragedy. The crowd watched in silence, some with tears in their eyes as the weight of what had happened settled over them. Erica Kirk stood before the crowd, her face a mix of grief and strength. Her heart was broken, but in that moment, she found the courage to speak. She honored Charlie's memory, speaking of the love they shared and the life they had built together. She was a woman forever changed by the loss of her husband, and yet she stood there, strong and determined to carry on. The world had lost a voice, a leader, and a father. But for Erica and their children, the pain of that loss was only just beginning. The moment Charlie Kirk's body hit the ground, the world seemed to stop. But the police didn't have time to stop. The hunt for the person who took Charlie's life had begun, and the investigators worked tirelessly, racing against time to find the killer. At first, there were no clear answers. The police were left scrambling, chasing down one lead after another, only to find that each path led to a dead end. One suspect was arrested, only to be released when it turned out he was not the killer. Another person was questioned, but the trail went cold. Every new lead seemed to take them further from the truth, not closer. Then, weeks later, everything changed. The police had combed through hours of surveillance footage, hoping for a glimpse of the killer. And one day there it was, a grainy image on the screen. The camera had caught someone in the background, moving quickly as Charlie Kirk's event came to a tragic end. At first glance, it was just another blurry figure. But something about it caught the detectives' attention. They zoomed in on the face of the person in the video, studying every detail. As the image cleared up, they could see him more clearly. A young man with short, messy hair and a look of determination in his eyes. The police compared the image with photos from the crowd, and there, standing out in the crowd, was a match. The man in the video was Tyler Robinson. The realization hit hard. Tyler Robinson wasn't just anyone. He was a local, someone who had been living just a few hours south of Orem, where the shooting took place. The twist? The killer was far closer than anyone could have imagined. He was a young man who had walked among the people, hiding in plain sight. The police moved quickly. They tracked down Robinson's home and began piecing together his past. What they uncovered was unsettling. Robinson had been active on social media, posting about his political beliefs and thoughts on Charlie Kirk. It was clear that Robinson didn't just disagree with Kirk's views. He had come to despise them. The more the police learned about him, the more they understood the tragedy that had unfolded. Robinson wasn't just a random person who had killed for no reason. He was someone who had been consumed by his own anger and hatred, someone who had planned this moment carefully. And yet, Tyler Robinson remained elusive, slipping through the cracks of the investigation, hiding in the shadows. The manhunt was far from over, and the police knew that they had to act fast before he disappeared for good. The chase was on, and this time, they weren't going to let him get away. Tyler Robinson had always seemed like a regular young man. Growing up in a quiet town, he was the kind of kid who kept to himself, focused on his studies, and spent time with his family. But as he got older, things began to change. The boy who had once been quiet and reserved started to show signs of something different, something darker. Over the past year, Tyler had experienced a dramatic shift in his views. Where he had once aligned with his family's conservative beliefs, he began to lean toward the opposite end of the political spectrum. He started expressing support for issues that were completely at odds with the values he had been raised with. His newfound beliefs in pro-gay rights, trans rights, and other progressive causes became a point of contention at home. His father, a staunch conservative, could not understand the changes in his son. Conversations between them, once filled with simple disagreements, grew into heated arguments. Tyler's father couldn't wrap his mind around the fact that his son, whom he had raised with a strong sense of family values, was now rejecting those very principles. One conversation in particular stood out. Before the shooting, Tyler had mentioned that Charlie Kirk would be speaking at Utah Valley University. His father had dismissed it as a stupid venue for the event, furthering the divide between them. Tyler had grown more and more vocal in his disdain for Charlie Kirk, accusing the conservative speaker of spreading hate and division. In interviews following the tragedy, Tyler's mother spoke about her son's transformation. She described how he had once been a well-behaved child, someone who cared about his studies and future. But over time, she began to notice that his focus had shifted. His online posts became more aggressive, filled with sharp criticism for those who didn't share his new beliefs. It was as if he had been consumed by a sense of purpose, one that drove him to reject everything he had once known. The most unsettling part of it all was the secrecy. Tyler had begun keeping his thoughts and feelings to himself, retreating into his room for long stretches of time. He shared little with his family, especially about his growing animosity toward Charlie Kirk. His mother spoke of the pain she felt when she saw the change in her son, but she couldn't understand how deeply those changes ran. Tyler's political shift and his growing bitterness toward Kirk were just pieces of the puzzle. His complicated relationship with his father, once a source of guidance and stability, had become a source of tension and anger. The more Tyler's father pushed back against his son's views, the more Tyler withdrew. It was a classic case of two worlds colliding, the conservative world he had grown up in and the new, liberal world he was desperately trying to carve out for himself. The question that lingered, though, was why? Why had Tyler chosen this path? Why had he gone from a quiet, thoughtful young man to someone filled with so much anger and resentment? It was a question his mother struggled to answer, knowing only that she had lost her son to something she couldn't understand. And yet Tyler's actions, the secretive messages, the planning, and ultimately the decision to take Charlie Kirk's life, spoke volumes. They revealed a young man at war with himself and with the world around him, torn between his upbringing and the beliefs he had embraced. It was this inner turmoil that had led him to a breaking point, to a place where the violence of his actions seemed like the only way to resolve the conflict inside him. As the investigation continued to unfold, the puzzle pieces began to fit together, revealing a story far more complex than anyone had imagined. The world had lost Charlie Kirk, but Tyler had lost something much deeper, the sense of self he had once known, destroyed by a storm of political conflict and family rejection. And in that storm, a life was taken, leaving behind a trail of questions and an emotional devastation that would ripple through the years to come. As the investigation into Charlie Kirk's assassination deepened, something startling came to light. Tyler Robinson's own words. It wasn't just his political views or his growing anger that made him a suspect. It was the text messages he had sent to his roommate, the person closest to him at the time, that would soon reveal the dark truth behind the crime. It started like any other conversation between roommates. At first, the text seemed innocent enough. Casual chatter, talk about their day, small exchanges between two people living their lives. But as the days went on, something changed in the messages. Tyler began to drop hints. At first, they were cryptic. "I've got a big plan," he texted, though he didn't explain what he meant. It was a line that might have seemed harmless to anyone who didn't know what was coming. Then Tyler sent a message that sent chills down the spine of anyone who saw it. He told his roommate, "Look under my keyboard." When the roommate did, he found a note. The words written on it were chilling. "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." At first, his roommate didn't believe it. "What? You're joking, right?" the roommate replied. But Tyler didn't back down. Instead, he continued to talk about the plan as if it was already set in motion. The messages took a darker turn. Tyler confessed, "I'm still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still." Each new message painted a clearer picture of Tyler's state of mind. He seemed calm, almost casual, about something so sinister. His words were chilling, not just because of what they suggested, but because of how he spoke about them, as though carrying out the murder was just another task on his to-do list. "I had enough of his hatred," Tyler wrote in another message. "Some hate can't be negotiated out." It was a terrifying glimpse into his mindset. The killer wasn't someone acting on impulse. He was someone who had planned this out, someone who had spent days, maybe even weeks, thinking about this moment. Then came a message that seemed almost like an apology. "I'm sorry to involve you," Tyler wrote to his roommate. "I really didn't want to, but I had to do it. I had to silence him." The full weight of Tyler's actions came crashing down when the police saw the messages. They could no longer ignore the fact that Tyler had planned the murder and that his words, written in the privacy of his phone, were his confession. They spoke of a deep hatred, of a man so consumed by his anger that he saw no way out except through violence. The confession was not just a simple admission of guilt, it was a roadmap to understanding Tyler's mind. It showed the psychological complexity behind the act, revealing a person who was both terrified and determined, remorseful yet convinced that what he had done was justified. Tyler's words, once thought to be harmless exchanges between friends, now stood as proof of a carefully thought-out plan. A plan that had led to the death of a man, a public figure, who had sparked such intense feelings in Tyler. As the text messages were shown to the public, they only deepened the mystery. What had driven Tyler Robinson to this point? Was it truly just his political beliefs, or was there something deeper, something that had been building inside him for years? These messages became the key to unraveling the mystery. They gave the investigators the final piece of the puzzle. Tyler had confessed to the murder long before he was caught. His words had painted a portrait of a man at war with himself and with the world around him. The investigation had uncovered the truth, but it was a truth no one had expected. As the investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder continued, the questions only grew. Each new piece of evidence led to more uncertainty. What had driven Tyler Robinson, a young man with a seemingly normal life, to take the life of a public figure? Why had he chosen such an extreme act to express his anger and frustration? And most chilling of all, was he really acting alone, or were there others involved in the crime? The police had their hands full, trying to connect the dots and figure out the full scope of the crime. As they dug deeper, they discovered more than they expected. Tyler's connections to various online groups and the possibility that he wasn't the only one with a role to play. One of the most baffling aspects of the investigation was the discovery of Tyler's activity on Discord, a popular online platform where people could chat, share ideas, and even organize in private groups. It was there that Tyler had interacted with others, discussing his views and sharing his plans. But what was more troubling was the fact that, after the shooting, Tyler had posted about it on Discord, admitting to what he had done. The police quickly realized that this was not just an isolated act of violence. Tyler had been involved with other groups, people who shared his anger, his frustration, and perhaps even his plans. But who were they? What role did they play in the murder? And did they know about Tyler's intentions before he pulled the trigger? The investigation widened, bringing in federal agents who were now looking into the possibility of accomplices. The FBI began to dig into Tyler's online history, searching for any connections to others who might have been involved in the planning or execution of the murder. They looked into his social media accounts, his messages, and even his gaming chats. Were there others out there who had encouraged him, or worse, helped him? But the mystery didn't end there. As the police continued their search for more clues, they realized that the timeline of the murder didn't quite add up. Tyler had acted quickly, but was there more to the story than what was initially uncovered? The authorities were left with more questions than answers. Could Tyler have been part of a larger network? Was there someone else who had helped him plan the murder? Or perhaps Tyler had been influenced by others, pushed into a decision that he wasn't capable of making on his own. The questions continued to haunt the investigation, and with each new lead, the police began to wonder if they would ever find the full truth. Could there be more people involved? Was Tyler Robinson really acting alone, or was there a larger conspiracy at play? The investigation was far from over, and with every unanswered question, the case grew more complicated, leaving everyone involved with an unsettling feeling that the truth was still out there, waiting to be uncovered. As the world grappled with the tragedy of Charlie Kirk's murder, there was one moment that seemed to cut through the darkness and leave everyone in stunned silence. It wasn't just the sadness of his death or the anger that followed. It was the incredible act of mercy shown by the person who had the most right to be angry, the woman who had lost her husband. Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, stood at the front of a large crowd at his memorial service. Her face was a mixture of grief, disbelief, and sorrow. But in the midst of the unbearable pain, there was something else, a strength that no one expected. As the service began, Erica took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say would be heard by thousands and maybe even millions across the world. Her voice was steady, but filled with emotion as she spoke about the love she had shared with Charlie. But then, she said something that left the room silent. In the face of unimaginable loss, Erica extended an olive branch. She offered forgiveness to the man who had taken Charlie's life. She spoke of how, in that moment of deep pain, she had chosen to follow a path of mercy, just as Charlie had always tried to do in life. Her words were simple yet profound. She said that, like Jesus had shown on the cross, she forgave Tyler Robinson. In that act of forgiveness, Erica not only honored Charlie's memory but also took control of her own heart in a way no one could have imagined. She did not let hatred and anger consume her. Instead, she chose peace. She chose to forgive. The audience, who had come to mourn the loss of a man they respected and admired, found themselves deeply moved by Erica's words. There was an emotional weight to her forgiveness that went beyond the tragedy itself. In a world that often seemed divided by anger and bitterness, Erica's act of mercy was a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit. For the Kirk family, the loss of Charlie was devastating. Their lives would never be the same. Yet Erica's forgiveness became a source of healing, not only for her family but for everyone who witnessed her courage. In a moment when revenge or rage might have been expected, she chose the most difficult path, one that led toward healing, not just for herself but for the world around her. Her forgiveness sent ripples through the case, affecting how people viewed the investigation, the suspect, and even the deeper issues of violence and hate. It reminded everyone that, even in the most tragic circumstances, it is possible to choose love over anger, peace over violence. In the weeks that followed, Erica's words resonated with those who had followed the case. It was a story that would be remembered, not just for the tragedy, but for the hope that one person's mercy could shine through even the darkest of times. Tyler Robinson's arrest had only marked the beginning of a long, complex journey. As he sat in jail, waiting for the court process to unfold, his future remained uncertain. The charges against him were severe: aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, and witness tampering. The possibility of facing the death penalty loomed large over him. But the courtroom drama was just beginning. Tyler's case drew attention from every corner of the country. Legal experts and citizens alike followed every development with bated breath, knowing that the outcome could set a powerful precedent. This was no simple case, the stakes were high, and many questions still hung in the air. Soon after his arrest, Tyler's defense attorney, Kathy Nieder, was appointed. Kathy was no stranger to high-profile cases. Known for her sharp legal mind and fierce determination, she had represented clients in some of the most complex trials in the state. But this case was different. The weight of the death penalty, the intense media scrutiny, and the shocking nature of the crime all made it one of the most difficult challenges of her career. Kathy quickly made it clear that she would do everything in her power to ensure Tyler received a fair trial. But the complexities of the case were overwhelming. The evidence against him was strong: his own text messages, his confession, the motive, and the clear connection to Charlie Kirk's death. Yet Tyler's defense team would have to fight against these factors, trying to build a case that could lead to a lesser sentence or even an acquittal on some charges. Legal experts watching the case unfold knew that this would be a long battle. The court system was slow, and in a case as high-profile as this, every move would be carefully examined. The defense and prosecution would clash over the details, and Tyler's fate would be decided after months, possibly years, of legal wrangling. As the legal battle advanced, experts predicted that the case would be filled with twists and turns. Kathy Nieder would likely challenge the evidence, seeking to discredit some of the most damaging pieces. The question of Tyler's mental state would likely become central as his defense team worked to explain his actions and motivations. Was he fully responsible for his actions? Was there a deeper psychological issue that had driven him to commit such a violent act? With the trial looming, the courtroom became the stage for a public spectacle. People were eager for answers, wondering what would come next. Would Tyler be sentenced to death? Would the prosecution uncover new evidence that would tip the scales in their favor? Or would Kathy Nieder manage to turn the case around, presenting a defense so compelling that it would change the course of Tyler's future? As the days passed and the legal proceedings continued, one thing was clear: Tyler's fate was hanging by a thread. With so many unanswered questions, The courtroom drama had only just begun. The outcome of the trial would not only affect Tyler's life, but it would also leave an indelible mark on everyone involved, as well as the community watching from the sidelines. And with each new development, the twists and turns only grew more intense. The courtroom was the next battleground, and what happened there could change everything. What would the jury decide? What would the judge say? And, most importantly, what twists would come next as this long and complex case unfolded? The answers were still to come, but for now the world would have to wait. The investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder was far from over. While the police had made progress, the answers they had uncovered only led to more questions. Who really influenced Tyler Robinson's decision to kill? Were there others involved, or was he acting alone? And perhaps the most pressing question of all, what drove a young man with a future full of potential to commit such a violent act? In the months following the arrest, the investigation continued to unravel. The authorities worked tirelessly to piece together every part of the puzzle, following leads, speaking to people who knew Tyler, and examining every bit of evidence they could find. The case wasn't just about finding justice for Charlie Kirk. It was also about understanding the deeper layers of what had happened. Tyler's personal struggles, his complicated relationships, and the hate he had carried with him were all part of the story, but there were still gaps. The truth was more complex than anyone could have imagined. For the Kirk family, the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, had found the strength to forgive, but the pain of losing her husband, the father of their children, was something that would never go away. The future was unclear, and the emotional toll was overwhelming. But Erica remained determined to honor Charlie's memory, no matter what lay ahead. As the legal battle for Tyler Robinson began, the case took on a new dimension. Would the truth about his motives ever fully come to light? Would there be more shocking revelations? Or would the case remain a mystery that only raised more questions than answers? The investigation had shown that things were never as simple as they seemed. With every new development, the story grew more complicated. The law had its course to run, but it was far from clear where it would lead. What would happen in court? Would Tyler face the death penalty, or would there be a different outcome? No one could predict the twists and turns that the case would take. And so as the days passed and the investigation continued, the world waited. What would the future hold for the Kirk family? What would become of Tyler Robinson? Only time would tell. For now, the case remained open, its final chapter yet to be written. But as more information came to light, the story promised to continue unfolding, revealing deeper truths and more shocking revelations. The mystery wasn't over. It had only just begun. Stay tuned as the search for the truth continues, and the answers to one of the most disturbing murders of our time are slowly uncovered. As the story reached its closing, the room grew quiet, the weight of the tale hanging in the air. The screen slowly faded into darkness, the Crime Fix logo glowing softly in the dim light. A sense of tension lingered, the music building, heightening the suspense as the final moments of the investigation continued to unfold. The mystery of Charlie Kirk's death had left more questions than answers, but it was a story that would not be forgotten. Every twist, every revelation had captivated the world, and the journey toward the truth was far from over. For those who had followed the case, there was no turning back. The story wasn't finished yet. New developments were always just around the corner, and the truth, however difficult it might be to uncover, was waiting to be revealed. As the screen faded to black, the message appeared, reminding the audience to stay connected, to keep watching, to see how the story would unfold. The investigation might have slowed, but it was far from over. The answers were still out there, and as the mystery deepened, more people would follow the trail to its final conclusion. The journey continued, and the audience was left with the feeling that they would need to stay tuned to see what came next, to understand what happened, and to